Hi, I'm the Plant Gals, and today the setup looks a lot different. I'm not sitting on my floor in front of the cabinet like I usually am, even though you can't see it's still back there. It's still in the background. Today we're gonna be setting up my isopods. I bought some new isopods. They're really, really cool. They will obviously be going into this bin at the end of this video. And I haven't set up an isopod bin in a while, and I'm really excited, and I think I'm gonna show you because I have been keeping isopods for about 1.5 years now. I've had really good success. This is not something I talk about a lot, but I even actually sell my isopods. I have done like a little bit of selling wholesale of my isopods and privately. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I love growing them and culturing them and just keeping them in general. I also have some in each of my reptile enclosures, and they work very, very hard at eating all of the poop and keeping it clean, my little custodians. All of those are also from my own collection, and I feel like I've just gained enough knowledge to where I can actually tell you how to set up a bin. Now, you might be wondering why you would want to set up an isopod bin. So there's a couple reasons. Even if you just want to use them for your reptiles, I recommend setting them up in a bin so that, let's say the ones in your reptile enclosure get eaten or they die off, or just over time you feel like you need more, then you can come to your bin, take some out and throw them in the reptile bin or the reptile enclosure, or however you want to do it. So you always have a culture in a bin like this, and that's going to save you a lot of money in the long run. So like you're not constantly buying cultures of the same isopods. Once you buy them once, you have them, they're living in this bin, and you're keeping them. I don't really like doing lots of care videos and stuff, but this is a very simple one. I don't even really consider it a care video because basically once this bin is set up, all you really have to do is mist them, check on them to make sure nothing weird is happening, and feed them. I'm basically just gonna set up this bin, show you the cute little isopods I got, and then we're just gonna, talk about isopods while I do it. So yeah, enjoy. Okay, so the first step obviously is kind of just gonna be creating our basic substrate. So this bag is just a bag of mix that I have from the plant shop I work at. It's a mix of coco coir, peat moss, and some perlite. It's just a really simple soil mix. You can kind of use anything. I just like this because I know it's in it, and it doesn't have anything extra added into it like fertilizer or any type of like beneficial fungi. Sorry, my cat is probably gonna make an appearance here. I do actually have some isopods that I've kept in just like basic soil mixes like Pro Mix, and they seem to be doing fine. Probably knowing what I know now, I wouldn't do it, and I prefer something like this that is much simpler. Oh, this is my tub. Essentially, yeah, the two most important parts, the soil and the tub. Tortellini just really wants to hang out today. This tub that I have is, I left a label on so that I can remember. I keep all of my isopods in this exact size tub. I've actually kept isopods in this one before. I just cleaned it out, and we're gonna put a different culture in here today. So this is a 6-liter shoebox. I don't really know what that is in other measurements, but this is a 6-liter kind of shoebox style little bin. And then I have this lid. This lid is an old lid, and it has holes in it, as you can see. Now, the holes in this lid were just done with like a pen or something. They're not great. I do actually have a soldering iron now, but this is fine. This lid, I'm not really fussed about it. Having holes in the lid is important for aeration. It prevents mold. There's actual airflow for the pods because they do breathe and respire, so they need some air. And honestly, like, yeah, just adding some little holes like that is good. Some people prefer to add some holes along the edges here if they're stacking their bins. I typically don't do that. I find it unnecessary just based on the way that I store them. So I'm just gonna fill this bin up to the appropriate level with some soil. I'll do like a little time lapse of that, and you'll be able to see like what level I like the soil at typically, because most species of isopods like to burrow, so it's important to have deep enough soil. Okay, so now that I've added the soil, I've kind of filled up my bin, maybe a little less than halfway. I am going to add some soil amendments. So for my isopods, I use 2 soil amendments. I don't use a lot of either of them, and I think that you can keep them without it, but it's just something that I prefer. So I have some horticultural charcoal. This also came from the store that I work at. This is kind of like the chunkier one. I really like it. I think it's great. I don't add a ton, just a little bit. You see? That's how much I have. And then I'm gonna mix this into the soil. smooth drainage, and it provides like a little bit of extra nutrients that sometimes the little pods appreciate. So I do like this stuff. And that's horticultural charcoal. So make sure that you are using only horticultural charcoal. And then I use this. This took me a hot second to find. This is dolomite lime. Essentially it's calcium. So isopods have shells, and their shells are helped to be made by calcium. So this stuff is essentially used to make people's lawns greener, I think. But it's straight up dolomite lime. This is what I've always used for my isopods. It honestly works great. So I have a half a tablespoon in here. I maybe add like 1 to 2 tablespoons total to each of the isopod mixes. I just kind of eyeball it. Honestly, like, I don't really think you can add too little or too much. I especially like adding it for my cubaris because a lot of them come from a part of the world that have more limestone, and they live in limestone caves. So they sometimes appreciate the calcium a little bit more. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons. And then yeah, I just mix it all together. Nice and simple. I actually really like working with dirt. Like, I like the way that it feels. I find that it's like super, I don't know, it's just satisfying maybe? And yeah, it's honestly, this stuff is just so easy to mix together, and I just like the fluffy feeling, and I think it's perfect. Okay, so that is our base. Now we can get on to some of the more fun stuff. I am gonna add some moisture to my soil now and mix it up again, and I will be right back. Adding moisture to your soil is kind of an eyeballing type situation. I like to add some in the beginning and mix it in rather than just waiting and misting it, because I think actually adding some moisture in can be really helpful, especially if the soil is going to be hydrophobic, which is really common for just dry soil to start out kind of hydrophobic. I don't add a ton. I still want it to kind of be that nice, light and airy so that they can burrow through it, so that I'm just kind of like barely feeling the moisture. It's really just like kind of by eyeball thing. I don't really have an exact measurement. I just add a little bit at a time and mix it until I get it to the point that I kind of like it. The thing is that you don't want it to be too wet, because at the end you will spray down one side to be wetter than the other, because we love a moisture gradient, and that's where the next part we're gonna add in is. Excuse me. So I like to kind of take maybe to about like here, this line, and I'm gonna take some of the soil out. And then I have this bag of sphagnum moss. I've already moistened this. Basically, if you buy a dry brick of sphagnum moss, all you have to do is add it to a bowl of water and rehydrate it. You don't want it to be dripping wet. You still want it to be fluffy like this when it goes in. And if it's not, you can just squeeze the excess moisture out. This sphagnum moss is gonna help to create the kind of really damp region of their home, because sometimes it is easy for things to dry out, and having that extra little bit of sphagnum moss can ensure that they're not drying out and they have an extra moist little place to go. And some of my isopods just seem to prefer having the sphagnum moss. They'll hang out in there all the time. So yeah, I don't have a ton, like you can see in terms of like how big this bin is, how much moss I have. And then yeah, it's okay if it mixes with the dirt a little bit. I just fill in the space so that there's like no dead space between them, because that would be weird. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I might add just a little bit more. It's like I said, there's like no real like right or wrong way to do it. You just kind of eyeball it and see what works. But that's basically the substrate. Now I am going to spray it down. So keep in mind, this end that you just added is going to be the moist end. You're gonna wanna keep maybe like a quarter of the bin pretty dry, just in case that they really want that dry environment. And then the other side of the bin, you're just kind of gonna spray down so it's nice and wet. So I have this Exoterra mister. I've used this for a while. I use it for my isopods and my reptiles, mostly my geckos, to spray them down. Honestly, it works great, and it's much more efficient. You just pump it like this to add pressure, and then it has like this little guy here, and you just push it down like a trigger. And I'm just gonna spray it down once again, there's no real like right or wrong way to do it. I just kind of eyeball it. It becomes easier with time. You want to make sure that the soil is obviously getting darker and wetter on top, and making sure that they're going to have lots of humidity. Now, it is important to say each type of isopod is a little bit different, and each will prefer different conditions. This is just a basic setup that I use for pretty much all of them. To be honest, some I just let dry out a little bit more than others, but their setup is pretty basic and the same. Today, these isopods are ones I've kept like very similar to before, so I've never kept this specific one. This bend setup is kind of just the basic one that'll work for most, like if you're keeping your like dairy cow isopods or magic potions or armadillium, like those are the types of things that I use. I've used this setup the same for my cubaris too, like my duckies and my cappuccinos. There's actually gonna be some more cubaris going in here today. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. So, last but not least is decorating. Obviously this part is so fun. Honestly, everything about doing isopods is fun. I got this bag, which I really love for my isopods, once again from the store that I work at, but it's cork bark bits from New Cal Pet. And yeah, these little cork bark pieces are honestly awesome. They're all like the perfect size for an isopod enclosure. And I just kind of pick some out and then squish them in so that they have places to go. I like to put one on the wet side and on the dry side so that they have places to hide on all the areas of the enclosure. I know this is kind of a weird piece. I'll put it in. I'm sure they'll enjoy it. And then the last thing after that is to just cover it in a layer of leaf litter. You don't have to add very much. I'm not going to be doing that in this video so that you can actually see what I'm doing. But yeah, so this is my actual setup. Sorry if my hands are shaky. This is the moss we added. Obviously you can see the soil and the substrate all mixed together. And then these are just the little pieces of cork bark that I added for them to hide under. Let's actually look at these isopods and add them. Obviously this is gonna be the best part, which is so exciting. So as you can see on the lid here, these are my citrus panda isopods. This is a pretty standard type of little cup that these guys come in. I can pretty much dump this completely upside down and add them in, but I want to get a decent idea of how many are in here so I can see how they're doing when I actually add them to the setup and check on them. But yeah, I'm going to dig through this a little bit, and then once they start appearing, we can look at them and start adding them in. So our first isopods have appeared. You can see them there, those little orange guys. Let's add them in. Now, if you get a cubaris species or an armadillium species or species that like to curl up into balls, when you put them in, they'll be a little bit stressed out, so they might kind of curl up in a ball like this. We'll see if we can get this guy to open up and watch him go in. You'll see that there's a bunch of just stuff everywhere now. That's actually because I just dumped the entire container in. You can see that here. By the way, if you were ever wondering what it means when there's numbers on it, sometimes it'll just say like a number like this, like 12 plus, or it'll say 12 count. That means the person that put them in put in at least 12, and they actually counted at least 12 go in. So that's what that information means. But you can see a little guy over here checking out his new home. Cubaris in general are actually very, very shy, I find. And it can be a bit overwhelming for them to go into their little home. I really like seeing this little one explore its new home. It is so cute. By the way, the little white things moving around, those are actually springtails. Those came in the culture. It's really, really common for your isopod culture to come with them. It's perfectly fine for them to be in there. It's actually healthy and good for them to have them. They're probably gonna like instantly burrow in, and you might add them in all over the enclosure and find that once you check on them in a few days that they'll all actually be hanging out together. Isopods seem to enjoy one another's company, and I think it's a good idea to keep them in groups as much as you can. Even in my enclosures where I only have a few or where I've only bought a couple, I find that I will find all three of them hanging out together even though that's all that's in there. But yeah, this guy's really cute exploring. I like seeing his little antenna. These guys over here are still a little bit nervous. The little ball guy. There's another little ball in there. Some of them have already kind of scurried off and found their little hidey holes and where they're gonna live. Honestly, these guys are all just so cute, and I'm so excited to have them. Their little friend has actually decided to unball itself. You can see it kind of just checking out its whole little new home for the first time. It's funny seeing some of them wander around and some of them that are literally like just still curled up in balls. I feel so bad for some of them. They get so shy. This bigger guy here is really using his antennas to check everything out. I love seeing them move their antennas around like that. It just feels like they're like actually thinking, trying to figure everything out. These citrus pandas are honestly beautiful. These ones weren't actually even on my radar until my boss brought them in. And as soon as I saw them, I was like, I just have to add these to my collection. I literally could watch my isopods for hours. The other things that like my isopods as much as I do are my cats. They love watching isopods. That was so much fun. Thank you for setting up my new isopods with me. I hope you had a great time and you enjoyed. I will cover them with a little bit of leaf litter, put them down with my other ones, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!